Hola. I think I'm live, so please let me know if you can see me, you can hear me. I know there's usually a little bit of a delay, so I'll just wait for you to say something. And let's see, I think it's working. So welcome to a new workshop. Today I will be continue to talk about some of the basic structures in Portuguese. But before I get into that, let me tell you who I am if you don't know me already. So my name is Susana, and I am a Portuguese as foreign language. I'm a teacher for Portuguese as foreign language. And if you checked the previous workshop, you know that I talked a little bit about just some real basics of the Portuguese language, how it works, where is the subject, where is the verb. There are two genders, masculine and feminine. There are singulars and plurals. I also talked to you a little bit about those transformations. And also some compound verb structures where you have an auxiliary verb, and only by conjugating that verb you can express what is going on right now at this precise moment of speaking, and also to talk about the future. So I give you just some basic information about how the language works. And today we will continue to dig a little bit deeper into different structures that are really helpful for you to know how they work. And today we will be talking about pronouns. Yes. Pronouns can be a little bit scary sometimes, because if you are learning the language, you see a list of pronouns. Every book has a list of pronouns, but you're not really sure when to use them because there are several types of pronouns, and we will be talking about that a little bit today. Before I share my screen with you and start to tell you a little bit more about that, let me tell you what a pronoun is first, if you're not familiar with the term. So if you are, you can just go grab a cup of coffee or a glass of water, and then come back in 2 minutes. I'm just going to tell you really fast what a pronoun is. So there are nouns, and a noun is a word that describes or identifies something as an object or a person or an animal or an idea or a concept, everything basically that has an article preceding it, like the car, the house, the person, the idea, the question, so it doesn't have to be something physical. And in Portuguese, exactly, it's the same way. That's a noun. And once you have identified a noun in a sentence, for example, I buy the car is the noun in this case that I want to refer to. Once I continue to talk in the dialogue, then I don't always have to mention the car with the noun. I buy the car is expensive, the car is green, the car is big. So I don't always have to be repeating the noun, the noun, the noun. That's where a pronoun comes in. So a pronoun will substitute the noun, will be in place of a noun. And you'll recognize them immediately once I start telling you a little bit more about pronouns. These pronouns will change according to the role they have in the sentence. So they will have different forms. That's basically what I will be talking to you about today. Also, don't forget, you can always ask questions. I will be checking the chat window to see if there is any questions in the meantime, and I will answer them as best as I can. Also, at the end, if you don't think of anything in the meantime, you can also ask them at the end, and I will also address them. So that's that for now. I will share my screen. You will stop seeing me now. I'll come back later, hopefully. So let's see. Okay, so I believe you can all see the same window I can. Let me just move things around a little bit. Okay, so what I have here, unlike last time, is not really a text. It's a bunch of sentences. They all mean not exactly the same thing, but they are very similar. And I will go through each and every one of these sentences and explain to you what is this about the pronouns, actually. So you have different types of pronouns. As I said, according to the role they have in the sentence. You can have a direct complement pronoun, indirect complement pronoun, reflexive pronoun, pronoun that is the subject of the sentence. So you have different types. We will start with the first sentence, and you'll see what I mean. So, o Pedro é rapaz. This sentence means Pedro is a boy. And Pedro, let me just the color here. Pedro is the subject of the sentence. So in this case, you have here the verb to be, but it can be any other verb. It can mean, for example, o Pedro compra carro. Pedro buys a car. So the one performing the action, that's the subject. This subject of the sentence, in this case is also a noun, is a proper name, but it's also a noun. You can also substitute it with a pronoun. And here you'll remember all these pronouns. Eu, tu, ele, ela, nós, vocês, eles, elas. So all these personal pronouns are the ones you are going to have when you are substituting the noun that has the role of the subject in the sentence. In this case, o Pedro, that's a he. Then you would grab the he and write the sentence, ele é rapaz. Obviously, this would come in the sentences after, because you already identified who you are talking about. Then you would continue to say, he is very kind, he's a student. Then you would continue using this pronoun. So all these pronouns that you see here, that are the ones that you use when you are substituting a noun that has the role of the subject in the sentence, they are going to have different forms according to the role that the pronoun has in the sentence. So that means when the pronoun is not the subject of the sentence. So we are not talking about the person performing the action. That's what we are going to see a little bit better now, what happens when the pronoun is not referring to the subject of the sentence. So let's continue to the next sentence. O Pedro compra o livro. Pedro buys the book. I tried to use the same nouns I used last time, so you're more or less familiar with them. That's the book. That's the verb to buy. Comprar, here in the infinitive. So Pedro buys the book. You already know that in the next sentences, or when you continue to talk in the dialogue, you can substitute o Pedro with the personal pronoun ele. And once you continue to talk about the book, I can say, o Pedro compra o livro, Pedro buys the book. And the book that Pedro buys is expensive. And the book is big, and he paid a lot for the book. So I continue to talk about the book. And so that I don't have to always repeat the word the book, I am also going to substitute this noun here with a pronoun. The question here is that the book, o livro, has a different role than o Pedro, because o Pedro is the subject of the sentence. So what we have here is the direct complement. And basically what this means that's the object of this sentence. For example, if you are having trouble identifying in the sentence what the direct complement is, you can ask the question, what, using the subject and the verb. For example, what does Pedro buy? Then the answer to this question is going to be the direct complement. Okay, what? Let me ask the question. O que é que o Pedro compra? What does Pedro buy? O livro. So when I have this answer, the book, I know that's the direct complement. And once I substitute o livro, the book, in this sentence with the pronoun, I have to substitute it with a pronoun that is the direct complement. So it will not look exactly the same as the pronoun used for the subject of the sentence. So in this case, the pronoun also refers to the third person masculine. He, the book, because in Portuguese the book is masculine. But because this is the direct complement of the sentence, it will look different. So this is what you'll have. Ele does not mean that you always have to use the pronoun. You can continue to repeat the noun, but let's just use the pronouns now. Ele compra o. So this letter here, u, that is exactly the same as the definite article, this is the pronoun as direct complement of this sentence. In this case, it's more or less easy to remember because it will look exactly the same, like I said, as the definite article. And it will be connected to the verb with a hyphen. Ele compra o. Okay, so far so good. So you don't have to repeat, he buys the book, he buys it. Basically, this is what it means. But you know you can have masculine nouns, you can have feminine nouns, singular and plural. So for all these options, you'll have different pronouns. And I have another option for you here. O Pedro compra a caneta. So the exact same sentence, but the thing he's buying is different, is the pen. Caneta. So can you think of a way to substitute the pen with a pronoun that is the direct complement, because this is what he's buying? It will also be the same as the definite article. Ele compra a. He buys it. In this case, is a feminine noun. Also, again, connected to the verb with a hyphen. Okay, let's see if anyone has questions so far. I'll have to wait a little bit because there's this delay and I have to see if someone writes something in the meantime. Okay, good. Looking good so far. No one has questions. So let's continue. You probably, let me just go back a little bit. You saw that there's this list of personal pronouns and all of them will have different forms. So keep in mind that I'm just now focusing on this one. So we have the direct complement here. Let's call it DC. And all of these other options will have their respective pronouns also. I'm focusing also on this one because it's the one that has most differences. So it changes a lot between masculine and feminine, singular and plural. So I'm going to keep to this one today. But the important thing here now is that you understand how it works so that when you have a list of pronouns, you'll know what to do with them. So it's important now that you understand how to use them and what to do with them. So moving on. Next example. So pretty much similar to the sentences we've seen so far. In this case, I'm using one of the compounds verb structures I talked to you about last workshop, which is go by. Basically, we have here the verb to go and the infinitive. And this refers to an event in the future. What happens when we have something like this? Now some exceptions start to appear, and although sometimes exceptions are not the case where you have to focus too much when you're a beginner, but in this case it's important because this will happen a lot. This type of structures appear a lot with infinitives, and in this case when you're going to transform the book into the direct complement pronoun, there will be another change that you have to pay attention to. So let's transform the sentence again. Ele vai comprá-lo. So you see there's a big change here. What happens is that when you have a verb ending in R, the R will disappear, the last vowel will be accentuated, and you'll add L to the pronoun. So 3 things. Last letter, you drop the last letter, you accentuate the word, the last vowel, and you add L. And again, this is just for the third person. Let's go back to the list so that you remember. This only happens in the third person, singular and plural. That's why I'm focusing on these ones today, because they have these exceptions. Here we are again. And when is this going to happen? Many, many times, because there are many structures that use an auxiliary verb with an infinitive. When I say ter de comprar, just giving you some examples here. Have to buy something also uses infinitive, and infinitives always end with er. So this will always happen in cases like this. Or estar, the one I talked to you about last time, estar a, and then infinitive. I am buying. This one will also use infinitive. So all these structures, there are many, many structures that use infinitive. In these cases, this transformation will happen. But it's not only when it ends in R. This also happens when it ends in S and when it ends in Z. Just going to give you, I don't want to bore you too much, I don't want to bore you to death with this, but just to give you an example. So what verb conjugations end with S? The second person, tu. So you know that every time you conjugate a verb in the second person, this transformation will also happen. Let's say you buy the book. Tu compras o livro. Let's transform the book into the pronoun. You know you have to drop the last letter, accentuate the last vowel, and add L. So what you'll have is tu compra lu. I'm sorry, because the accentuated vowel is only in the third person. Tu compra-lo. And now an example with Z. There are not so many verbs that have Z in the stem of the verb, so before the ending of the infinitive. Tell you, for example, dizer, to say, trazer, to bring, and fazer, to do. And these verbs, they have also particularities that in the third person, you don't have the regular ending, so it ends with Z. For example, ele faz o bolo. So we say he does the cake, he bakes the cake. And the third person has the ending in Z. So it's just a few situations where this happens, but this is one of them. So we would have ele falo. Again, the Z goes away. You add the L and you accentuate the last vowel. This is the third person again. Okay, so you have adding L, dropping the last letter when the verb ends in R, S, Z. So I see a comment here. Paul says that gostar de, gostar do, da. I assume you're talking about this type of structures. Gostar de, to like something. To like something uses this preposition here. Gostar de, for example, I like to buy. Gostar de comprar. He likes to buy it. Then you would also have the same situation. But when you use this structure, instead of using with the verb, you use it with a noun. For example, I like the cake. Gosto do bolo plus noun. Let's use cake here. Gosto do bolo. Then this would not be the same situation because you do not have an infinitive here. And in this case, you would basically do a contraction of this preposition. With the pronoun here, you basically say gosto dele. I like him. So this would be a little bit different. Think of it as when you have an infinitive in a structure, then that's when you have to do this transformation. So this is one of the important aspects I want you to keep in mind, but there is still another one. This is usually one of the least favorite topics for my students because of these transformations that you have to do. But important now is that you understand how this works. So let's see this situation here. Eles compram o livro. They buy the book. We already have a pronoun here, so we don't have to do anything to it. But again, here we have livro, o book. Eles compram no. They buy it. And as you see, there's also a little bit of a transformation here. You add N in this case. And what is this case? Is when it ends with M. When is this going to happen? So basically every time you have a conjugation in the second and third person plural that ends in M. You, plural, or they, when you conjugate it in the present, in the past perfect. So you'll always have this M here at the end. Not always, but most cases. And unlike the previous situation where you drop the last letter, in this case, you're going to keep it. You're just going to add N. So you have M, then you add N to the pronoun. Not only when it ends in M, also when it ends in ão and oi. This is not going to be such a common case. There are some verbs that are going to have this ending when conjugated. For example, they give. Eles dão. That's the verb dar. So this would not be the regular ending for they. Usually it is M, like you see here. But when you also have this ending, then eles dão no. They give the book. Eles dão no. And oi, also not a real common situation, but you have, for example, the verb pôr, to put, which is also an irregular verb. And you'll have in the third person this ending, ele põe, he puts. Ele põe no. So these three situations, M, ão, oi, will add N to the pronoun. See? Let's check the chat window to see if everybody's still awake. If there are questions, hope it continues to make sense. Okay, so going back to our list from the beginning, remember that we are talking about direct complement. So what answers the question what? What do I buy? What do I eat? What do I see? What do I have? Okay, I see a question there. I'm just going to address it in a second. And that these options that we have seen here, I'm going to write them down. These options that we have seen here, with the exceptions also when you add L, when you add M, they refer to the third person singular and plural. The rest of them will be uniform, will not change in these situations. Hope this makes sense. Let's leave the others blank for now. So I have a question here, and the question is, are these principles used in formal and informal situations? Sure. So when I say ele, ela, and that's a good question, thank you. When I say ele, ela, you know that, or if you don't know, I'll tell you that this third person here does not only include he and she, ele and ela, it also includes the formal treatment, o senhor, a senhora. And this is also going to happen in this case because this two, and also here, os senhores, as senhoras, these are also included in the third person. So this is also going to be something you're going to apply in these cases. So I hope I answered your question. Muito bem. So direct complement. Every time you want to substitute a noun in the sentence that has the role of the direct complement, this is what you're going to do for the third person, singular and plural. But let's see what other types of pronouns we can have. Moving on. O Pedro compra o livro ao amigo. Pedro buys the book from his friend, or from the friend. Doesn't have a possessive here, from the friend. Amigo, that's the friend, and livro, that's the book. So now we have two complements here. We have two things in this sentence. We no longer have the book alone. That's going to be the direct complement, what we've seen before. We also have to whom he's going to buy the book. This is going to be the indirect complement. And how can you identify this indirect complement in the sentence? Like with the direct complement, where you have the question, what do I read, what do I buy, what do I see? Here you're going to ask whom. Whom do I offer this? Whom do I buy the book from? Whom am I going to telephone? So it does not necessarily have to refer to a person, although that's usually the case. But this will help you identify what is the indirect complement in the sentence. And like with the noun that is the direct complement, you can also substitute this with a pronoun once you already know what you're talking about, so that you don't always have to repeat the friend, the friend, the friend. So let's see how we can do this. O Pedro compra o livro-lhe. O Pedro compra-lhe o livro. Let me get this a little bit closer. So this pronoun that refers to the indirect complement, it's also going to be connected to the verb with a hyphen. So that's why it's going to change places here with the book, because it has to be placed immediately after the verb. And you see that it looks completely different from the pronoun as direct complement. That would be the book. That would be o. This one is going to be similar when you're talking about a plural noun. For example, he buys the book from his friends, aos amigos. Ele compra-lhes o livro. He buys the book from them. If we go back to our pronoun list somewhere here, we are going to add here the indirect complement. And we are also going to be here in the third person, lhe and lhes. The difference is that this one is not going to change according to gender. It's also only going to change according to number. So you have singular and you have plural. The other options that you see here, they are going to be similar when it's direct complement and when it's an indirect complement. So I'll add them now. I'll just change the color. Let's do this. Eu, me, tu, te, nós, nos, vocês, vos. They are going to look exactly the same when it's the indirect complement. Me, te, nos, vos. That's why I chose to focus here on the third person, because that's the one that changes the most. So at least this one is easy. They look the same, whether they're direct or indirect complement. So let's go back to our example. So here, regarding indirect complement, are there any questions? Is it clear to you? Let me just wait a second to see if anyone mentions anything. Apparently not. So let's continue. Then there is something else you need to pay attention to. I told you that these pronouns are going to be connected to the verb with a hyphen. But that's when the pronoun is placed after the verb. Okay, I have a question. Let me just interrupt for a second. Someone asks for an example. And can you just please mention in connection to what? Maybe, I think I know what you mean. Maybe you want an example with the other pronouns, maybe? Is that it? I'll just give an example anyway, and you can tell me in a minute. Okay, an example for these two. Let's just use the first person. I'm going to write it here on top. Ele vê-me. He sees me. So this is the verb ver, to see. And this is a direct complement. What does the person see? He sees me. If I would have a book, what does he see? He sees the book. So that's the direct complement. So that's me. Ele oferece-me livro. This is the verb oferecer, to offer. Oferecer. And usually when you have an indirect complement, not always, but sometimes it helps to identify that this is an indirect complement when you see a direct complement also in the sentence. He offers what to whom? So you have two in a sentence. And this is the case here. You have a book and you have to whom you're going to, or he's going to offer the book. In this case, me. He's going to offer it to me in this case. So they look the same, but they have different roles in the sentence. I hope I helped with this example. If not, just let me know and I'll give you some more. But this is what's going to happen with these other options. They are going to look exactly the same, always connected to the verb with a hyphen. Muito bem. So let's move on. Tick, tick, tick. No, that's the oranges. That's for later. Okay, so I was just telling you that this pronoun is placed after the verb connected with a hyphen, but it's not always placed after the verb. Sometimes it's placed immediately before the verb. And that's what we are going to look at in this example here. Eles não compram o livro. They don't buy the book. I'll keep on using this color. Eles não. You already know that o livro is the direct complement, is the thing that they don't buy. So this is the one we are going to transform into a pronoun. Eles não o compram. So the pronoun is now here placed before the verb. And there is no hyphen, it's gone. When does this happen? There is a list of situations where this happens, but I'm just going to mention maybe 3 of the most common situations where this happens. When you have a negative sentence, so the fact that you have the word não in the sentence means that you're going to have to place the pronoun before the verb instead of being here connected with a hyphen. Actually, this would have an N because it ends in M, but I don't want to confuse you. You get the point. Instead of being here, it's placed before the verb. What this also means, for example, in this case, you see that this would be an exception because it's the third person. So you would add an N because it ends with M. But when it is placed before the verb, these rules don't apply anymore. So you just use the regular, let's call it the regular pronoun. No L, no N attached to it. This is one situation where you place the pronoun before the verb. I'll mention another one. For example, when you have the word ainda, yet. Eles ainda. Let me just do a different example. Eles ainda o têm. They still have it. Let's imagine it's the book. So you see again, the pronoun placed before the verb. This is the verb here. Instead of placing it after, let's imagine we don't have the word ainda. Let's eliminate it. Eles têm no. Again, the verb ends in M, so this is one of those exceptions where you'll have to add N to the pronoun. But when you have the word yet, because you have to place the pronoun before the verb, the N disappears again. So you just use the regular pronoun version. Let's call it like that. And one final example where this happens. So there's a bunch of adverbs that force the pronoun to be placed before the verb, but this also happens in another very common situation when you ask an open question. For example, do you buy the book? Do you buy it? Or what do you buy? That's an open question. What do you buy? I buy the book. Let's use he so that we have a similar sentence. O que é que ele compra? What does he buy? So that's the open question. Because you don't know what he buys, you have no direct complement here. You don't have the what he buys. But let's add the thing that he buys to the sentence, and let's transform this into a yes or no sentence. Ele compra o livro. So far, yes or no question, you also have the pronoun after the verb. Let's now do an open question where you have the noun in the question. Quando? When does he buy the book? So now you can include the book in the open question. Quando é que ele compra o livro? When does he buy the book? Okay, we have the noun here. We haven't transformed it into a pronoun yet. Let's do that now. Quando é que ele o compra? Quando é que ele o compra? So you see, I've transformed the book into the pronoun and placed it before the verb because this is an open question. So it's not a question for yes or no. You see a question for yes or no. Sim, no. Does not change the place of the pronoun. Let's imagine you substitute the book here with the pronoun. Ele compra-o. Does he buy it? So still connected to the verb with a hyphen placed after the verb. But an open question, then it changes place again. And this does not only happen with direct and indirect complement pronouns, it also happens with reflexive pronouns. We are not going to talk about those today, but so that you keep in mind every time you have a pronoun connected to the verb, this is what's going to happen in these situations. If you check the podcast episode number 5, I think, if you go to PortugueseLab.com and if you check under podcasts, episode number 5, the related resources have a list of all these situations where you have to put the pronoun before the verb. So you can go grab that if you want. Sim, question. So let's see if anyone has any questions. Let me just wait a bit to see if there's a question. Apparently not. If something, okay, there's a question. Wait. So the question is, where does the pronoun go when there is a verb plus infinitive combo? Like, that's a good question. Like, não vai comprar o livro? Let's write this sentence. Let me add some space here and change the color because I'm tired of this one. So let's do an affirmative sentence first. Ele vai comprar o livro. So we have a combo. As you see here, you have two verbs in a row. One has the infinitive. Let's transform the book into the pronoun. Ele vai comprar. Don't forget, this one has an R, so you have to change it a little bit. Ele vai comprá-lo. You have to add L. It's going to buy it. So you still connect it to the last verb with a hyphen. So that's the last verb is the one that's going to influence the fact of whether there is or not this transformation, because that's the last letter is the one that's going to influence it. So you couldn't put it here in the middle. Now let's transform this sentence to the negative. Ele não vai comprar o livro. He is not going to buy the book. Now let's transform the book into the pronoun. Ele não o vai comprar. So again, because you have não, you have to place it before the verb. And think of these compound structures as one. So you're not going to put it in between when you're talking about direct complement. When, and I don't mean to confuse you with this, but since you asked, if you have an indirect complement, let's say, I am going to call her. Eu vou telefonar a Maria. So I'm going to call Maria. And whom am I going to call? This is an indirect complement. In this case, you would have to substitute this with le. But you have a compound structure here. So where do you put the le? Eu vou-lhe telefonar. Eu vou telefonar. Both these options are possible. Which one do I use most if you would ask? It's hard to say. You really can use them interchangeably. They are both possible options. So I hope this also helps you. This example helps you a little bit. If you would have não, then you'd only have one option. Eu não lhe vou telefonar. I'm not going to call her. In this case, you have to consider this as one entity, and it has to be placed before the verb. So you cannot have a verb still, or you cannot have the pronoun still appearing after a verb here. It always has to be before. Sim, muito bem. I hope you're still with me, not thinking, oh, this is terrible. I hate this topic. Everybody hates this topic. I think it's a really cool topic. So at least if you go through this first phase where this all looks a bit complicated, and once you understand how it works, then you'll see it's not a big deal, and it's important for you to know this because this shows up all the time. So if no one has any other questions about these pronouns, I still would like to talk to you a little bit about something that one of you asked me to just clarify a little bit how it works. So I will just talk to you a little bit about that. It's a different topic. So that's where the oranges come in. And here they are. It's about indefinites. So if you don't know what that is, they are words that refer to quantities, but not specific quantities, like all, some, other. So you don't really know how much is some or how much is all. So they are called indefinite for this reason. And you can easily find a list of these words everywhere, but I just want to tell you a little bit about how to use them in general. So let's just pick one. Let's say todo, all. And todo, so before I go into todo, there are two types of indefinites. There are ones that are going to change according to gender. So if it's masculine or feminine or singular or plural, so they are going to be placed before the noun, sometimes also after, but they are going to have to agree with this noun. So you have to change it accordingly so that these endings will change. And then there are the ones that are invariable. So they do not change according to gender and number. And these ones, so that you have an idea, are words like ninguém, no one, tudo, everything, nada, nothing. So you get the idea. They are the ones that do not change according to gender and number. But when you use a variable indefinite, you do have to change them. So let's try to use one here, like todo. That's all. The difference between todo and tudo, just in case you're wondering, because they're similar, tudo means everything. Let me give you an example. Eu como tudo. I eat everything. This tudo, it does not refer to a specific noun, so it does not change. Everything, I'm not telling you what everything is. But if I tell you I eat all the oranges, then oranges being nouns, you have to use the indefinite that is going to change according to gender and number. So let's use todo. Eu como a laranja toda. So this is laranja, and it's feminine, and it's singular. So you have toda. You have the options todo, toda, todos, todas, according to gender and number. And this means that you are referring, when you use it in singular, you are referring to only one entity. That means that you are going to eat the entire orange, this orange completely. You're not going to leave any piece behind. Let's look at these oranges here and say, I eat every orange or all orange. Eu como as laranjas todas. So laranja, although in plural, is still feminine, so you have a, and because it's plural, you have the ending s. And in this case, it does not refer to only one entity, it refers to more than one, so it means you eat them all. Basically, that's what's going to happen with all indefinites. When you talk about some, for example, I buy some oranges, or when you have, for example, a lot, I eat a lot of oranges. Let me give you some options here, for example, algum. These are the variable ones, the ones that are going to change according to gender and number. Algum, nenhum, none, todo, all, outro, another or other, muito, a lot, pouco, a little. And for someone that hasn't been learning a lot, I would just keep to these ones. There are more, but these are the ones that are easier to understand now at the beginning. So all of these options are going to change according to the noun they refer to. And that's going to happen in the ending. So the ones that end in O, if you checked the last workshop, you'll know that it will build feminine with A and plural with S. And the ones that, so this is not together, okay, this is just the ending. And the ones that end in M, if you checked it, you know it will transform to N and S in the plural and add A to build the feminine. As I said, the invariable indefinites do not change. For example, when I say I eat everything or I don't see anyone. Eu não vejo ninguém. And ninguém, nada. So when there's nothing, there's zero, either objects or people, then they have to be included in a negative sentence. So you have to have no. And this is basically the crash course of indefinites. But if you have also any questions about this, maybe I can also focus on this topic specifically some other time. But if you have any questions now, you feel free to ask. Anyway, so let me remember again how to work with this stuff here. Hola. So I'm back again. I hope you I hope everything is clear. Let me just check where the window is. Here it is. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask. We are at the end of the workshop, but I'll still give you just a couple of moments more to think of if everything is clear. If you remember any questions later, you can always send me a message. This video will be available here anyway, so you can look at it again a minimum of 10 times before you have everything in your head. But I'm sorry, I'm just moving windows around. But that's it. So this was another workshop. This was a little bit more complex than the previous one, but that's the way it is. As you start to move forward in the language, things start to get a little bit more complicated. But I hope I was able to give you an overview of how these pronouns work. And now it's time for you to go and practice and see if you have any questions. Like I said, you can go to the site PortugueseLab.com and check under podcast and check under episode 5. There is a PDF that you can download that has these situations where you have to put the pronoun before the verb. So feel free to go there. And let's see, we have some comments here. Someone is asking how often I do these lessons. Well, every time I have some available time. Hopefully I'll be able to do another one soon. But if you want to know when this happens, either subscribe to the channel, because then you'll get a notification when I'm live, or go to the site PortugueseLab.com. You can also subscribe there and also get a notification. I'll send an email when the next workshop will happen. And then there's another comment. Past tenses in Portuguese. Yes, that would be another topic. Maybe I can focus on that some other time also. That's also going to be a complex topic. So probably just one workshop wouldn't do it, but I'll keep that in mind. And because I know verbs are usually that topic that everybody has problems with. Not always, but it's one of the most complicated topics because of conjugations and when to use them. But anyway, so thank you all so much for coming. It was great being here. I hope you got something out of this. As I said, if you don't have any other questions now, feel free to just send an email. I always respond to emails, so feel free to do that. And I hope to see you next time. Ciao, ciao. Where's the window? Wait. Here it is. Ciao, ciao. Até a próxima.